everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are talking about my most anticipated releases for the second half of 2024. So I did an anticipated releases for the first half of the year at the beginning of the year or at the end of 2023. So I'll link that in the description if you're interested to know what were the books I had my eye on at the beginning of the year. But I like to do a second half of the year anticipated releases about midway through the year because a lot of other things have been like announced and things have official covers and stuff like that. So that's what we're doing today. These are all books that I have my eye on, that I'm interested in. There's like an even longer list of things that I'm like kind of keeping track of. These are the ones I'm particularly interested in, but it's still not necessarily like I'm definitely going to buy or read all of these. But these are ones that are particularly interesting to me and I am anticipating. I am going to be just reading descriptions off of Goodreads. I have my laptop here, so I'll be just reading off of that. Yeah, and let's get started. I mean, the second half of the year always has fewer releases than the first half of the year, but I feel like this year there are like some good releases coming out in the second half and a few that I am particularly excited about. Before we get into those, there are a couple of books that have already been released that I either didn't know about or were announced after I did my like anticipated releases for the first half. So I just want to mention them. The first one is Demon Daughter by Lois McMaster-Bujold. This is the 12th book in the Penric and Desdemona series, which is a series of novellas about, it's set in the world of the five gods, which is a world that Lois McMaster-Bujold has now written 2 series within. And in it we follow Penric, who is a sorcerer, which in this world means that he is possessed by a demon. So he shares his body with the demon Desdemona, which for many people, sharing their body with a demon can be very dangerous. Merlin is digging at his dog bed right now, so if you hear a weird sound, that's what that is. But for many people, sharing your body with a demon can be quite dangerous, but Penric and Desdemona have become friends and they have a delightful dynamic between them. And so this has, as I said, 12th book in the series. It's a very fun series. I love the way Lois McMaster-Bujold writes characters. And in this one, there is a 6-year-old girl who accidentally gets possessed by a demon herself and ends up on her own, and so she is found and brought to Penric as someone who has expertise in this area, and he tries to help her. So this one has already come out. It actually came out in January, but Lois McMaster-Bujold with this series especially tends to just kind of release books unexpectedly sometimes, so didn't know that this was coming out until recently. And then I think that was the ebook came out in January, but the audiobook didn't come out until March, and I usually listen to this series as audiobooks. I actually am listening to this book at the time when I'm filming this video, and I am enjoying it. It's a very fun series. Okay, the other one that came out in June is The Stardust Grail by Jung Kitasi. This is a sci-fi book. I think they had another book called The Deep Sky that came out, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, which didn't quite sound like it was the kind of sci-fi I wanted to read, but I've heard good things about it. This one sounds more intriguing to me. This one says that Maya Hashimoto was once the best fine art thief in the galaxy. For 10 years, she returned stolen artifacts to alien civilizations until a disastrous job forced her into hiding. Now she just wants to enjoy a quiet life as a graduate student of anthropology, but she's haunted by persistent and disturbing visions of the future. I don't know what my neighbor is doing, but they are making the just banging sound. So I don't know if you can hear that. I'm sorry if you can. I don't know what they're doing. It says, then an old friend comes to her with a job she can't refuse. Find a powerful object that could save an alien species from extinction, except no one has seen it in living memory, and they aren't the only ones hunting for it. So that just sounds like it's going to be very fun, very like art heisty, and it has a very cool cover. So this sounds like sci-fi that might be up my alley. All right, so now we're actually getting into the books that are in the second half of the year. And I'm realizing that I meant to wear my glasses while I was doing this so I could actually read things more easily, and I have not been. Okay, first up is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. This, for one thing, just has such a beautiful cover. It has this very like cozy look to it. I think this is a cozy fantasy. Sarah Beth Durst, I have read 2 books from her before in the like Queen series. I don't remember what they were called, which I thought they were okay. I didn't really love them, but I've heard from other people that they really like a lot of her other books. So I'm really interested to just read something else from her, because I have been curious about reading more of her books, and this one looks delightful. It says, The Spell Shop is a cottagecore cozy fantasy following a woman's unexpected journey through the low-stakes market of illegal spell selling and the high-risk business of starting over. You know what, there's a lot more about it, but I don't really want to know more. I want to just go into this with just the vibes of the cover. That's all I want to know. Also in July is Penrick and the Bandit by Lois McMaster-Bujold. This is the 13th book in the Penrick and Desdemona series. And it sounds like in this one, maybe a bandit tries to take advantage of Penrick because he's a pretty unassuming guy and but the bandit may not realize that Penrick is actually incredibly powerful because he has a magical demon in his head. So that sounds like that will be delightful. I'm not sure where this lines up in the like internal chronology. So I'm not sure, because sometimes she writes them out of chronological order. But I'm always excited for a new Penrick and Desdemona book. So those are the 2 books for July. Then in August, there is A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. So it says, this is a dark retelling of the Brothers Grimm Goose Girl, rife with secrets, murder, and forbidden magic. T. Kingfisher as an author has been very hit or miss for me. I have liked some of her books, but most of the things I've read from her haven't really worked for me, so I'm not sure how this one is going to go. From my experience so far, I tend to like her traditionally published books more than her self-published books, but I also don't know if that is because of the publishing or because many of her self-published books are her like fairy tale retellings, and maybe I just don't like her retellings as much. However, I think this one is traditionally published, I believe. I'm not totally sure, but I think this one is traditionally published, but it also is a fairy tale retelling. And if those are both true, then I will be very curious. This will be the thing that tells me, do I like her traditionally published book, or is it just that I don't like her fairy tale retellings? We'll figure it out. So gonna give that one a try probably. Also in August is Any Human Power by Manda Scott. This is one that I actually just recently heard about, and I'm very curious about this one. So Manda Scott wrote the Boudica series, which I have been reading and really enjoying. I like her writing a lot. And she's written a bunch of other like historical fiction series before, but this is her first book, I think, that is not historical fiction and is actually more like modern to slightly future. I saw her pitching it as a through-topia. That's the term she used. Essentially, she's saying how previously a lot of her books have focused on history with this idea of like, if we can remember the wisdom of our past, maybe we can build a better future. But she was like, that isn't really working. We need to like imagine what that future is, not only look at the past. However, a lot of books that are future focused are either like dystopian, which are scaring people of a negative future, trying to warn them of negativity, which doesn't really work. Or it is a utopia. There's the utopia that's actually secretly a dystopia, and then there's a utopia where things are kind of already this like better imagined future, but there isn't really a clear story of like how do we get from where we are now to that better imagined utopian future. And so this story she is describing as a throughutopia, which is supposed to be like, how do we get from where we are now to a better future? So she's saying like, this is my proposal of what we do as a society to get from where we are to where we want to go. But that is in the form of a story because people understand things best as stories. So it's in the format of a sci-fi thriller. I think that's such an interesting concept. Sci-fi thriller is not really a genre I tend to read, but this is one I really want to try. I already know that I like Amanda Scott's writing. Her pitch for it and the concept behind it is really interesting. I don't know anything else about it. I don't want to know anything else about it. I'm just so curious about this book. Also in August is The Silence Factory by Bridget Collins. So this book actually came out, I think in May in the UK. So you can get it in the UK, or if you're in the US, you can get it from like Blackwell's. But in the US, it's coming out in August. So that's why it's here. But this is Bridget Collins' newest release. She wrote The Binding, which I loved, and then she also wrote The Betrayals, which I did not really like. However, her writing is always fantastic. Beautiful and atmospheric. The vibes are immaculate in her books. So I always enjoy like the writing itself, but didn't really love The Betrayals. So this is her third like adult literary fiction book, and I'm kind of hoping that this will give me some indication about how I feel about her as an author, because I've had of the two books she's written so far, I loved The Binding and then I didn't really like The Betrayals, and so I'm trying to figure out like which of those two is the anomaly and which is the rule, and like is this an author where, you know what, I just loved one book from her and that's okay, or if this is an author where it's like, oh, I tend to really like what she writes with maybe a few exceptions. Like, how much should I follow her writing? Anyways, all I really know about this book is that it is following this family that has I think like a factory that manufactures this special fabric that on one side creates like absolute chaos and noise, and on the other side is absolute silence. But I think there is some like nefarious dark underbelly to how this fabric is created or how the materials are sourced or something like that. I don't really know, but I am very excited to read this because, as I said, I always love her writing. The vibes are always amazing, even if the story is like, you know. So hopefully this will help me. This will be like a tiebreaker for me to figure out how I feel about this author. And in September, I think I only have one book in September, which is The Forest of a Thousand Eyes by Frances Hardinge, which I think had a different title before. But Frances Hardinge is an author that I just discovered last year. I mean, like, I knew she existed, but I only read one of her books last year and I really enjoyed it. So I'm curious about reading more of her books, and this one has forest in the title, so I am on board. However, it says that it's illustrated, and so I'm wondering, is it a picture book or is this like a novel but has illustrations? I'm not really sure which, but it says, "The hungry forest is moving forward like an army, a green and constant threat to the humans living in it and on an increasingly crumbling wall. Feather, accompanied only by her scaled ferret, Sleek, must avoid the forest's tentacles and the many dangerous creatures it shelters to return the community's precious spyglass to its rightful place. Along the way, she develops her resilience and meets other people living on the wall, whose stories and experiences open her mind and those of her community to new horizons." That tells me very little about it, but that's okay. I'm still intrigued. All right, then in October, coming out is Air by Sabaa Tahir. I think this is set in the same world as, wow, I've totally forgotten the name of the other series, but her other series, which I read and enjoyed. But Ember in the Ashes. There we go. But I think this is set in the same world, but it's following like different characters. Again, one I don't want to know too much about, but I think we are following like 3 different characters. It says, beloved storyteller Sabaa Tahir masterfully interweaves the lives of 3 young people as they grapple with the burdens of power, the treachery of love, and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed. Sounds interesting, and you know, I loved her other series, so I'm excited to see this one, where this one goes. And this is only a duology, which is interesting, and always kind of nice when things are a little bit shorter. And then finally, one of my most anticipated releases for the entire year, The Shadowland by Signe Pike. This is the 3rd book in the Lost Queen series, which I think has been expanded to a full series now. Originally it was a trilogy, but I think that it's going to be a series. There's also talk about like a prequel that was about one of the other characters in the series. Anyway, this is historical fiction with like a little bit of magic in it, set in medieval Scotland, and it is following Langareth, who is inspired. Langareth was an actual person in history. She was the sister of the man who they believe inspired the story of Merlin. But she was an actual person. She was a queen. Very little is known about her, and so this series is Signe Pike kind of reimagining and revoicing this woman and imagining like what her life could have been like. I have been loving this series. I love the first 2 books. Her writing is beautiful, atmospheric, and I am so excited for this 3rd book. It has been 4 years, I think, since the 2nd book came out, so we have been waiting a while. But she puts a lot of research into these books. She actually takes, you know, trips to Scotland to see the actual places that she's writing about. So I feel like that adds a lot of like depth to the story and setting, which I appreciate. But 4 years is a long time to wait, man. Anyways, this one is coming out in December, and I'm really excited about it. It looks like they changed the cover design for this 3rd book. The first 2, the cover design for like the hardcovers matched, and then they would do like a different design for the paperbacks. I really didn't like the cover design for the hardcovers of the first 2 books, and I like this new design better, but it still kind of annoys me that like they don't match. So, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. This new design, I will say, like, I like it better than the first 2 books, but it also is like a little bland. Like, it doesn't really tell you anything about the book or like really give you the vibes of it. But it's prettier, I guess, if a little underwhelming. Anyways, I'm still really excited about this book. This is probably like my most anticipated book in the second half of the year. All right, well, those are all of my anticipated releases for the second half of 2024. I'd love to know if you're also excited about any of these books. Are there any anticipated releases that I didn't mention that you're really excited about? I'd love to know. I'm always excited to know about anticipated releases. I have a much longer list on Goodreads. I have a shelf on Goodreads for like new releases from every year from, I don't know, starting like 2018 or something through now. So I have a very long list of ones that I'm like kind of keeping an eye on, but these are the ones that I am most excited for. And while there are never any guarantees, honestly, with any of my reading, these are the ones that I am most likely to read. But I'd love to know what books you're anticipating in the second half of the year. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.